Yeah, and I totally agree. I really love the fact that he's playing 4 copies of Falcon Aristocrat and 4 copies of Thundermaw, because you see some lists mess around with maybe 2 Thundermaws, 3. That card's too good. Just play 4 copies. It's clearly one of the better threats in the format. It allows you to close out games very quickly. You want to be playing 4 of that card if this is your strategy.
Yeah.
So looks like Brian Mulligan down to 6, but he's happy with his 6 cards. And we're off to the races. He is on the draw. We have a tap land for both players on turn 1. And now Chris is playing Band Control. He's a Holofan on turn 2, and we're going to see Augur Bolus. Oh no, turn 2 Farseek.
When we take a look at Chris's deck list, of course, there are 4 Farseeks here, but there are also 3 copies of Supreme Verdict that go along with 3 Sphinx's Revelation, 3 Advent of the Worm, 2 Syncopate, 2 Dissipate, an Attention Sphere, a Jace Memory Adept, a Jace Architect of Thought, and a Garrett Primal Hunter. Creatures are 4 Thragtusk, 4 Restoration Angel, 2 Tristani Selesny's Voice, 1 Angel Serenity, and a card that you were a big fan of, 2 copies of a Aetherling as Strangler Dice coming across.
Yeah, and generally I would say Kibler is probably advantage a little bit because Band Control has a tough time dealing with cards like Falcon Red Aristocrat, and Thundermaw Hellkite's obviously a very good threat as well. But Chris's deck, he has a lot more creatures than a typical Bant deck would have. So he actually has ways to close out games. He has Advent of the Worm, and he has 4 copies of Thragtusk Restoration Angel, which again is one of the better combos in the format.
Yeah, and you're right, he does have Advent of the Worm. Gonna eat that Strangler Geist for breakfast. Kibler going to put a Blood Crypt into play tapped and pass the turn back. And if you can keep up with Kibler's hand at home, good on you. We're going to try to. There's a Thundermaw Hellkite, but that might disappear in a second as he shuffles through his hand. So Thundermaw Hellkite is gone now. Into the Aether, it's gone.
And Kibler is just a little, I think, too far behind. Chris did miss a land drop, but it looks like he has another Advent of the Worm in his hand. And Kibler's deck does not have a lot of removal. He has 2 copies of Putrefy and 1 Abrupt Decay. As basically his only removal. He has 4 Bonfire of the Dam, but that's not really going to do much against Advent of the Worm unless it's late in the game and off the top of the deck. So,
and how about another Advent of the Worm?
Oh, there's one of the
All right, Kibler has a Putrefy to take care of that. So if you're Brian, you got to be pretty happy about that.
Yeah, that's fine. And basically, you waste the turn there. Kibler does have a 4th land, and it looks like Chris did draw a 5th land now. Plays it untapped. And we're going to see it. And, oh, here comes a Thragtusk. So he should be able to drop Kibler down to 10, and he has lethal on the board already.
Yeah, so who is the aggressive deck here? This is the kind of thing about Band Control, right? Where before it did not have the ability to turn the corner like this. We saw a version like this from Melissa Natora at Pro Tour Gatecrash, and the way the giveaway here is the Kessig Wolf Run among Chris's lands. He also has a Steam Fence to activate that, but you saw this version from Melissa Natora in a way to be able to actually kill people, and you saw large Wolf Run activations on her way to top 8 of that tournament. Prior to that, the Andrew Cuneo build that Reduke made top 8 of back-to-back tournaments with, that was the most grindy deck I may have ever seen in Magic history.
Yeah, and those decks just cannot function in this type of format.
No.
There's just there's too many durable threats. You can't play a deck like that when Voices of Resurgence are running all over the place. So this version, a card like Advent of the Worm can just close out games so quickly. And again, you can cast out on turn 3. That Farseek was huge, and it really pushed him ahead of Kibler. Even though he missed a land drop, he was still able to cast 2 Advent of the Worms before Kibler was able to put any kind of pressure on the board. So, Kibler had to even waste a turn using a Putrefy to, like, slow the bleeding a little bit, so.
Yeah, I mean, look at Brian right now. I mean, the easy thing here to do is just look at the deck names underneath each player. Band Control, Jund Aggro. Brian right now is trying to figure out a way to stabilize or not die against a Thragtusk and an Advent of the Worm token. There's a Kessig Wolfren down there. He also has to put into consideration of what if my opponent has like a red source in his hand that he's sandbagging or just peels off the top of his deck. All right, that's a nightmare. What can I do to get myself out of the situation because he's staring at a Huntmaster that fells. Huntmaster don't do nothing against these guys that are in play right now.
It's basically a Huntmaster to buy myself a turn to try to draw maybe a 5th land and maybe Thundermaw can get me back into it.
Yeah.
But, again, Chris has a Sphinx of Revelation in his hand too, so it's difficult to race a Bant deck when you're already behind and they have life gain.
Yeah. Advent of the Worm is the one card that really just changes everything for these Bant decks, and it's kind of funny where we talk about all the decks that we may see, we may or may not see this weekend. We even ran down the list of decks that some of the top players in the room are playing. At no point did we really consider Advent of the Worm among any of those decks. Or we didn't even mention the card for the most of this weekend, and that card is incredible. I mean, look what it's done to this game alone. It has changed the way the Kibler has to play this game completely while letting Chris go on the offensive. It's just, it's fantastic.
And here we see Tristani come down prior to combat, so in case the Thragtusk does die, he'll gain 3 life when the Beast token comes into play.
Yeah.
So I like that play by Chris. Not sure, I maybe would have preferred to cast Sphinx of Revelation to just guarantee myself drawing 3 cards, as well as try to get some, like maybe a card like Detention Sphere or maybe a Garrett Primal Hunter. But either way, still pretty good shape here. He's attacking for 5. Kibler is at 12. He doesn't have to block right here. He can choose to trade with the String Root Geist though.
Yeah, I mean, decisions, right, for Kibler here in a big way, because if he does trade with the String Root Geist, then the token comes into play for Herron. He's able to gain 3 life of Tristani, and then the populate mechanic is actually on as well. I mean, I'm probably going to populate a 5/5 instead of a 3/3, but, you know, just in case Kibler does draw another Putrefied to take care of the worm, he does have something else to populate. So this is a very difficult situation for Brian, and he is going to block and trade, and, you know, 3 life is going to be gained here, assuming that Herron does remember his trigger and pass the turn back. Now, remembering the trigger here is a big deal, I think.
Because, you know, Kibler's not... I'm not sure Kibler has quite enough damage to close things out. He has the Thundermaw and the Aristocrat. So unchecked, that's still only 14 damage. So if everything goes according to Kibler's plan, that's basically the most he can do right now. He's going to have to chump block next turn. So not sure Kibler has just enough damage, but let's see what he does this turn. Looks like another Huntmaster is going to come down.
So it looks like to me what he's setting up OSIP right now is he's kind of gumming up the board a little bit. Huntmaster going to gain 2 life, push himself up to 14, put another Wolf token into play. He has 4 Bonfire that he has to draw to. Now he has 6 mana, so Bonfire up the top would be for 5, which would actually clear everything up. As you see, Herron draws a Jace Memory Adept for the turn. But I think that's what he's trying to set up right now, is a huge Bonfire to swing things back in his favor.
Yeah, a huge Bonfire, plus if he can navigate some of those flips with the Huntmaster, if he can maybe block a couple here and then do 4 damage with both my Huntmasters on my turn, maybe reflip them, maybe Chris doesn't have a play, maybe he just populates this turn, you know, definitely in a position where top deck Bonfire would be perfect, but maybe he can sort of navigate something here with those Huntmaster fells.
So a mill from the Jace, which is going to move up to 5. Herron draws another Tristani, mills a Blood Crypt. That's not a Bonfire the damn.
Yeah,
and if it's Bonfire off the top, it literally wipes out everything Kibler draws.
I'm not quite sure.
There.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Chris is trying to do. He's already ahead right now. I think he has to try to press his advantage. If you attack with the Advent of the Worm, you can still populate. You know? So what's the worst thing that happens? Kibler blocks with 2 of his wolves, and you trade and you can trade. You'll at least kill one of the Huntmasters. So.
Yeah. So Kibler's just going to pass his turn back. Does not play Thundermaw Hellkite to try to take out the Jace. Does none of that. So now what he's going to do is he's going to flip the Huntmasters. Ravager of the Fells is going to go over to Jace, over to the Beast, over to Jace, over to the Beast. All of that works out in his favor. The reason I think Chris wasn't attacking as he draws his 7th land is that he has an Angel of Serenity in his hand. And a mill there is going to take down the Thundermaw Hellkite and draw Herron a Temple Garden. Now, I agree with what you're saying, is he can just continue to be aggressive, but this sure does make it a lot easier.
Well, I would have either preferred to cast Sphinx of Revelation the turn before, or activate my Tristani.
Sure.
Jace would probably have been the last play I made.
Sure.
But either way, I understand that you're trying to play for Angel Serenity. I just don't think you have to, especially if you have a Sphinx of Revelation in your hand.
Sure.
But, you know, or Tristani, like, you can win with what you have in play. You're going to gain 5 life, make another 5/5 Trampler. What does Kibler do there? Does he triple block to 5/5? That seems like a terrible play for him. But
oh, so Kibler has the 2nd Putrefied to get his guys back, gives back Herron a Thragtusk, but he's out from underneath Angel of Serenity, which is a big deal. So now, what can he draw this turn? Is it Bonfire the Damned? It's still not there.
But I don't think he needs Bonfire now here, though. If he has, oh, so he only has 6 mana, so he can't play Falcon Wrath and Huntmaster.
Yeah, he's a little ways away from that.
I think he has a Mountain in his hand, so he'll have 7 mana this turn. I think you might want to just jam out the Huntmaster here, or you could probably, you might be able to play Thundermaw here. You might be, because if you play Thundermaw here, you attack for 5. Next turn, if you draw an 8th mana, then you can go Huntmaster Falcon Wrath, and suddenly you could be right back in the driver's seat. Oh. So yep, here comes Thundermaw, and he's going to start getting aggressive. He's going to take out that Jace, and suddenly, you know, Chris can attack with the 5/5, but Kibler can just take it and go down to 4, and suddenly things can swing back, and
that might be a huge draw. That might ruin all of Kibler's plans. Syncopate off the top there for Herron. Temple Garden coming into play, excuse me, untapped, but that might change everything for this game for what Kibler's trying to set up. And Kibler may have just came to the decision point of, hey, I can't beat a counterspell at any point anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to try to execute my game plan and hope that he's not playing any. As Theratos shows up to the party, and it's actually going to gain Herron 10 life.
Yeah, Herron's going to gain 10 life, and he still has mana, I believe, to populate.
Yep.
So he can get another 5 life.
And he can attack too.
Yeah.
With a worm token.
A lot of options there. So let's see what Kibler decides to do first. Again, like you said, when you're backpedaling and you're trying to, you're facing a lot of pressure. Generally, you don't play around counterspells. You're just like, I have to do this. If he has a counterspell, I'm going to lose anyway. So, not sure how much Kibler's going to factor in the fact that Chris might have either a dissipate or a syncopate.
All right, so 1, 2.
Probably going to play the
4.
Huntmaster first.
Yep.
Yeah. You want to make sure you resolve that. I don't think he might not have gotten the 8th mana, which actually helped him, because then he would have gone for it this turn.
Now Stranger Root, guys. Yep, gonna populate, gain 5 more life. And
Yeah.
we'll bring Tristani up on the screen for you guys so you can see everything that this monster from Selesnya does. This is one of the more underrated cards. I mean, mostly because its casting cost is very difficult. But when this card is online, it is pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, and the fact that it's 4 mana and it competes with so many quality 4-drops, even in this deck, Chris has 4 copies of Restoration Angel along with 3 copies of Advent of the Worm, So you just have so many 4-drops that you're competing with, but obviously Tristani, when it's rolling, it does really, really well, especially in a deck like this when you have Thraktos.
So what you're saying is that this should cost 3 mana.
Oh, well.
So, that's what you're saying.
If it was 3 mana, I think everyone would be playing it.
It should be 3 mana and not legendary.
Yeah,
okay.
3 mana, 2/5 non-legendary creature.
All right.
Yeah, I would play it in every single deck possible.
I live near Wizard of the Coast. I'll give him a little talk.
So both Advent of the Worm tokens are swinging over. It looks like we're going to get a quadruple block of one of the tokens.
Not the best feeling in the world.
Not the best. So we're going to be able to deal with 2 of the wolf tokens along with the Stranger Geist, if Chris chooses.
So here's something funny that can happen in this game, because I don't want to pronounce a game over before it is, but I think that Brian may go on to lose this game. Because I think that what Tristani is doing right now is borderline insurmountable.
Yeah.
I mean, Herron's at 30 life, potentially going up to 35 or who knows how much. Let's say that next turn Kibler turns over a Bonfire of the Dam and it gets syncopated. Who does that help more from like an information standpoint?
I think it helps. I don't think it helps either player. I think Kibler assumes that there's counterspells, and Chris assumes that there might be. I think it probably helps Chris because I could put Kibler on not having bonfires in his deck.
Okay.
I think Kibler has to assume that Herron has counterspells.
Sure.
So I don't think Kibler's going to be surprised by anything.
And if you're Herron, if you see the way that Kibler is drawing his card every turn,
yeah,
that's the miracle tell.
Yeah. So I think that. But then again, some people aren't that conscious of that, So I agree with you. It's definitely something that will factor going into the next game. But I think in general, it really won't have that much of an impact. And
it's kind of funny that Kibler did not draw Bonfire of the Dam for the turn, but he may have drawn a different miracle in the form of Abrupt Decay. You're going to see a revelation here from Herron. Going to take down that worm token, so no more populate skis, but just 6 cards and 6 life instead.
Yeah, so again, he's gaining 6 life here. He still has a Thraktos in play, but...
Restoration Angel, Revelation, a Thraktos can land, another Restoration Angel. Not bad, Mr. Herron, not bad.
Yeah, not a bad turn for Chris. Kibler is starting to mount some amount of offense, but he can't really... It's hard for him to overcome Tristani.
Yeah.
Tristani's ability is just too good right now.
He's gaining so much life.
Yeah, he has a Restoration Angel. He can gain another 13 life just by casting Restoration Angel.
Yeah.
He still has Syncopate mana, and I believe he has double Restoration Angel along with another Sphinx Revelation and another Thraktos. So,
Farseek here from Herron. Going to be probably his lone spell for the turn. Kibler says, you're not casting out with the Glacial Fortress. Get that Temple Garden over there.
And that's actually huge too, because he can get his red source now to activate his Keswick Wolf Run. So with Kibler only at 3, it's going to be tough for Kibler to be able to stop everything, especially if the Restoration Angel comes down. Because again, all his blockers are land creatures.
Remember, only 1 red source in Herron's deck. He just does have that 1 copy of Steam Vents. But being able to basically free roll a Keswick Wolf Run and a red source in your deck is pretty sweet for this deck, because again, it always is going to have so much mana in play because it wants to go to these longer games and big revelations and stuff, and then it can just convert those resources into just one big punch in the face over and over again until they're dead.
Yeah, it's sort of similar to, you know, Cunio's invitation where they were splashing black just for the land. Here you're just splashing red for a land. You're not splashing for any spells. So.
And we saw Melissa DeTore have great success with this at Pro Tour Gatecrash in Montreal, where she made her top 8.
And I'm surprised Chris actually cast the Thragtusk here, because if you cast the Restoration Angel, you could actually gain more life and still have mana to populate the beast token that you get off the Thragtusk.
Yeah.
So I think, and you would have had more mana up for Syncopate if you needed to. So, but either way, he has access to Keswick Wolfrun. That might be enough to close things out.
Kibler is trying. Huntmasters are flipping back and forth and back and forth. He is trying his heart out here. Both targets going to go towards Thragtusk. But you see Herron picks up his hand. It is stock loaded. He has multiple Restoration Angels. He has a Sphinx of Revelation. Restoration Angel looks pretty good right now to make sure that Thragtusk lives. It's
going to make sure the Thragtusk lives, and again, gain you 13 life.
Yeah. It might be more than 13,
I'm sorry,
right?
16, because the token.
Yeah, so it's 5, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, 16. Just 16.
Just 16 life. And also gives Chris a very solid attacker next turn to make sure that Kibler dies. You know, Kibler, if Chris tried to kill him with the Thragtusk and Keswick Wolfrun, Kibler might just be able to gang block and soak up enough of the damage. But with the Flyer, Kibler has no flyers to block other than the Thunderbolt Hellpoint. So Keswick Wolfrun plus Restoration Angel would probably be enough to kill Kibler, short of removal spell.
Looks like we may be getting a beast token out here. I'm not sure if you remember the trigger for the beast token or not. I'm assuming that Herron did, but I could be wrong about that, as there's no beast token in play just yet.
Okay,
he's
so
going to come across with Thragtusk.
Yeah, it looks like we might have missed a trigger there, and Thragtusk is now attacking.
You can see Kibler separating the lands, figuring out, all right, how much is this Wolfrun activation going to be for? How much damage do I have to try to soak up?
So it looks like he has to soak up 6 damage here. Or, I'm sorry, 5 damage. Because that Wolfrun can get activated for 4. So
gonna put Thragtusk to a 9.
Yeah. So he can choose to block with Stranglegeist and the Wolf tokens. Probably his best bet. Keep those Huntmasters around. If he has 2 spells next turn, he can still flip them again, gain some more life, and gain some more blockers.
Yeah. You and Brian thinking alike.
Yeah, you know, I think Kibler is obviously trying his best, but again, it is so difficult. The amount of life that Chris is gaining each turn is just so overwhelming. Even with this block, Chris is going to kill 2 of Kibler's creatures and still gain 3 life because he gets a beast token into play. So it's just slowly but surely Chris is just whittling away at all of Kibler's resources.
And we're drawing another Huntmaster of the Fells. That'll be his 3rd one of the game.
So he will be able to cast 2 spells this turn to reflip both those Ravager of the Fells. So he'll be able to get 2 more blockers into play along with gaining 4 life. But again, not able to put any pressure on Chris. So it basically, you're going to see the same thing that happened last turn happen again.
With there's always the threat of that Keswick Wolfrun activation looming.
Yeah,
that's the scary part.
I think Restoration Angel, I don't even think, if Kibler just taps out here, then Restoration Angel is just going to kill. Restoration Angel is just going to kill Kibler next turn.
Yeah. All right, here's another one. So going to blink out, gain a bunch of life. See if Herron gets his beast token this time.
Yeah.
Yep,
so
and Brian's just going to pick it up.
Kibler's not even bluffing anything there. Obviously, can't deal with double Restoration Angel, Keswick Wolfrun with that much mana, and being only at 7.
So Chris Herron's going to win game number 1 here with Band Control over Brian Kibler playing his innovative Jund aggro deck. We're going to go to the sideboards for you guys. We'll take a look at Kibler's first, since he's going to be down a game and being playing first for game 2.
Well, he has 2 copies of Rurik Thar, the Unbowed, in his sideboard, which is a pretty interesting card. We didn't see Chris cast that many spells in this game, so but in general I still think you're probably going to bring this card in. It's got vigilance, it deals 6 damage to anybody trying to cast a spell, so it's pretty good against Sphinx's Revelation. So Rurik Thar I could see coming in. 3 copies of Domri Rad, again, another Planeswalker, usually good against control decks, but the fact that Chris plays so many creatures and he's able to actually attack Domri Rad, not sure how effective it's going to be in this particular matchup. It's a card that really shines against a deck like Esper Control, but against like a deck like Band Control, where they can actually cast like Advent of the Worm, Restoration Angels, and Thragtusk, and they're beating you down, can be a little tricky, but I think on the play specifically, I think Jund aggro probably still wants this card. Has one copy of Garruk Relentless. Even though it's a Planeswalker, I don't think you probably want it in this matchup. He does have 2 copies of Thragtusk, 3 Olivia, 2 Rolling Trembler, 1 Abrupt Decay, and 1 Zealous Construct. I could see Zealous Constructs coming in as another way to deal with Angel Serenity. I also like the Olivia Voldera, because Chris's deck doesn't have a lot of spot removal, so Olivia could just take control of games.
Yeah, all by itself.
Yeah, all by itself. So I like Olivia coming in. I like Rurik Thar, and I like possibly 1 Zealous Construct along with maybe some Dharma Rods. He has 1 Abrupt Decay in his main deck, which isn't very good in this matchup. That's probably coming out. He has 4 copies of Bonfire and 2 copies of Varel's the Scar Stripe. I'm not sure how much I like Bonfire in this matchup. I mean, I know there were a couple turns where if he top decked it would have been great for him, but I don't think you really need 4 copies. I think you could chase some of those numbers. I just don't. I think there's too many situations where it's not going to be very good, especially if you're in the play.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the situation too where hard casting one is not even close to like realistic.
Yeah, I just don't think you can afford to have one in your opening hand in this matchup. So I probably see some of those coming out as well.
Take a look at Herron's sideboard here. 1 Witchbane Orb, 1 Assemble the Legion. We'll go 1 Detention Sphere, along with 2 Pithing Needles, a Staff of Nin, 2 Negate, 3 Simic Charm, 2 Rest in Peace, and 2 Rocks Faith Menders. Faith Mender, typically a card I like against aggressive strategies, but I actually don't like it against this one. Just because Kibler is so hell-bent on going over the top of the opponent instead of fighting in the trenches on the ground, because if he's trying to win on the ground, he got no shot to do that. You know, he needs Falkenrath Aristocrat and Thundermaw Hellkite to actually win him the game. So I think that, you know, Rock's Faith Mender is interesting because it's able to gain Herron a lot of life, but I don't think it's going to ever block very much.
Well, I think it still might come in just because he saw Strangleroot Geist and he saw Huntmaster the Fellows, so it's good at holding those guys off. He has some Planeswalker in his decks that aren't very good in this matchup, so you definitely kind of want to board those out. Don't think you really want the Tension Sphere, especially since you saw the Abrupt Decay.
Yep.
So you might want to board those out. Although, again, I think a card like Assemble the Legion might be pretty reasonable against a deck like Kibler's, just because, you know, it's going to allow you to hold off the ground if you can actually just make sure he doesn't. Again, Falkenrath Aristocrat and Thundermaw Hellkite are probably the cards that you have to fear the most, but he didn't see Falkenrath Aristocrat that game. He only saw Thundermaw.
Yep.
So I'm not sure how prepared he'll be for the Aristocrat or not. He might be just thinking this is just a typical Jund aggro deck. He's got Strangleroot Geist. Maybe he's not sure about the Aristocrat yet, but I kind of like Faith Bender just because even though Kibler's best cards are all in the air, I still think they hold off the cards that you don't want to lose to the cards that you shouldn't lose to. Like, you don't want to lose to Strangleroot Geist, you don't want to lose to Huntmaster.
Sure.
I think Rock's Faith Bender basically ensures that you don't do that.
There's certainly a chance as well that Brian did sideboard those cards out. I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see Kibler side out Strangleroot Geist because it's so much work to be able to get it through for. You know, on the play, I think it's a lot better than on the draw.
Yeah.
I'll give you that, but it's a lot of work to get that thing through for, you know, 2 or 3 hits.
That's true, but I think, you know, I still think Kibler puts Chris on being sort of like a Bant control-ish deck. He saw Jace, so maybe he's just like, all right, Chris isn't going to get that kind of draw again where it's like double Advent of the Worm, Thragtusk, Tristani. Yes, Strangleroot Geist is bad against that side of the deck, but it's very good against the deck where it's like Syncopate, Supreme Verdicts, you know, that side of the deck, you know, Think Twice.
Yeah,
so
the non-creature side.
Yeah, so I think if Kibler is going to be on the play, he can't afford to make his deck less aggressive, because if Chris doesn't have a Farseek, turn 2 Strangleroot Geist, turn 3 Flint of Core can almost win the game on its own.
Yeah, I mean, that'll get in for, you know, in between 7 to 10 damage by itself, and then the Flyers are just on cleanup.
And then the Flyers are to clean up duty. So I don't think Kibler can afford to board out the early drops in his deck, especially being on the play. Maybe on the draw.
Sure. We see Herron's going to take a mulligan down to 6 here. Again, if you guys are just joining us, Osa Lovadovich, Cedric Phillips here in the booth. Star City Games bringing you guys Grand Prix Miami, as Herron does not look particularly pleased with his hand. You can join us on Twitter. Tell us what you think he's got over there at SCG Live, hashtag GPMIami. We've got some luminaries out there tweeting at us. One of them, Luis Scott Vargas. Perhaps you've heard of him.
Yes.
Luis saying, and I quote, he does not think there's going to be a lot of Bant Hexproof moving forward. Quote, you won't have Bant Hexproof on camera for very long, that's for sure.
Oh my goodness, his teammate, Josh Utter-Layton.
No, that might be a pun because the deck is so quick, or Luis could just think that's not a very good deck. You never know with Mr. Scott Vargas.
And here we see a turn 2 Farseek from Brian Kibler and a turn 2 Steam Vent from Chris Herron. So obviously, I think we have the standard slow Bant draw that kind of caused Chris a little pain when he saw his 6 cards. Probably good enough for 6, but really was frustrated with how slow it was, particularly against a deck like Kibler. So
we've also got the Bant draw with no green mana right now. It's Kibler's draw for the turn was Garrick Relentless, a card that we weren't sure if he was going to board in or not, but obviously he has. He's going to make a Wolf token and pass the turn back. I'm kind of with you in the fact that I don't love this card in this matchup because I don't think the Wolves are horribly relevant. Additionally, there are cards that can really fight that thing down, like Advent of the Worm, Restoration Angel, a lot of easy ways for Herron to kill it. But it is, again, just a one of in Kibler's sideboard, and it does provide a unique effect, like protecting a Fault Around Aristocrat and giving you some fodder for that. And so now here come the Wolf and the Aristocrat, and Kibler's going to play a Stomping Ground tap, make another Wolf, and pass the turn.
Yeah, it looks very good when your opponent doesn't have any green mana. But here we go. Now here Advent of the Worm turns everything around. And a Farseek instead. So let's see, does he have a... What kind of wrath effects are we looking at from Chris's deck?
We're looking at 3 Supreme Verdicts and a card that we talked about a ton a little bit earlier, Terminus. None of those here in his main deck. So relying on Supreme Verdict, relying on his creatures to actually play his defense, along with Advent of the Worm, which is a quote-unquote creature, and then some counter magic in the form of Syncopate and Dissipate as far as his defenses are concerned, but none of those have showed up yet.
Yeah, Terminus is pretty much the only card that can get you out of this type of situation, just with now double Falcon Wrath Aristocrat.
Kibler is not messing around now. Coming across for 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think he's going to put another Wolf token in play. He is. Herron's at 2. He draws his card for the turn. It is a Witchbane Orb, and it is going to be a concession. So Brian Kibler cleans up game 2 very fast off of the back of a Farseek-fueled start.
So again, I think Chris is a little confused as to what Kibler's playing, because Witchbane Orb is not a card you typically want against Jund aggro.
Think about what he saw.
Yeah, again, if he saw the Aristocrat, I think that changes. But even if you see a Stranglegeist, you kind of have to know.
There are some versions of Jund control. I can give you a very good tip here. I have a little bit of knowledge because Jerry Thompson does write for Star City. He wrote an article a couple months ago about having Stranglegeist in the main deck of Jund, like the Jund mid-range deck. He's playing 2 of them in his main, 2 of them in his sideboard. And it's like, is Kibler gone towards that strategy? Because the rest of the cards that we saw 2 Putrefies, we saw an Abrupt Decay, we saw a whole lot of Huntmaster of the Fells, and we saw Thundermaw Hellkite, a card that Jund is starting to adopt as well. So it would be very easy for Herron to misallocate what deck Kibler is playing, thinking it's some sort of crazy hybrid Jund aggro or Jund control deck, when in reality, we know, just like you guys do at home, that Kibler is playing a pretty aggressive Jund aggro deck.
Yeah, and honestly, Witchbane Orb, the only card that's really effective against out of Kibler's deck would be Bonfire, which we're not even sure he's going to have after board. So I think, I definitely think that it was one of those situations where Chris kind of put Kibler on a typical Jund control deck.
Maybe a little scared
and was afraid of Rakdos return, Slaughter games. So let's see if he decided to go to the board again, or because there was really nothing in game 2 that would suggest that Kibler is off that deck. You saw. Oh, I'm sorry. You did see the Aristocrat this time.
Yeah.
So now I think Chris might suspect that something's up. Maybe this is just a typical Jund aggro deck, and he boarded that card back out. Again, it's only a one of. He just boarded in 1 copy of Witchbane Orb, but we'll see what happens after board.
Because correct me if I'm wrong. During game 1, we did not see Flint Hoof board either.
No, the only card that might have given Chris a little cause for concern was a Stranglegeist.
Okay.
That was the only card that you can sort of say, maybe this isn't typical Jund, because Kibler played a Farseek, he had a Thragtusk, or he had Huntmaster of the Fell, and he had Thunderbolt. Okay, those are all cards that you could see out of a Jund control deck.
Yeah.
So and again, even a Jund mid-range deck could board in Rakdos return against you. So maybe you want a Witchbane Orb, but I think maybe that now that he saw the Falcon Wrath Aristocrat, maybe the Witchbane Orb will come back out.
So Herron's going to be on the play for game 3, which is a big deal because the thing with Bant control, being on the play for this deck is certainly important. It does play defense, but I wouldn't say it plays defense particularly well. Also, when you're on the play, Syncopate and Dissipate are much better cards. It's night and day there. But a Farseek fuel draw on the play, as we saw in game 1, is absolutely huge.
This is one of the problems I always have with these green-based control decks. And even with Jund, it's like the deck looks amazing when you cast Farseek on turn 2.
Yeah.
But when you don't, it looks just like a very average deck.
Yeah, it looks like the most fair deck in the world when it doesn't have Farseek.
And turn 2 Farseek is probably my least favorite play in Magic because it makes certain decks look better than they really are.
Well, prepare to be unhappy.
There we are. Turn 2 Farseek. the best card, the best card you could possibly ask for if you're Chris Herron.
So Hallowed Fountain coming into play tapped, and Kibler's going to untap that Blood Crypt. He's going to draw a card, draws a Bonfire the Dam.
So it looks like he kept in at least one Bonfire, and it looks like there's also a Zealous Conscript, so he did board in the one Zealous Conscript.
All right. Flint of Bourne just passing the turn back. It is a 3/3 because of Blood Crypt. But now, as you said, Farsi changes everything because now Herron's going to play a 4th land, and this is the most uncomfortable situation to be in if you're Kibler. What am I going to play around? Is it Restoration Angel? Is it Advent of the Worm? Is it a counter spell? What do I play around?
Looks like he does have a Putrefy, so he could decide to just attack and just Putrefy the Advent if he does have it. So Chris doesn't have it, and
Kibler just has to pass the turn back in a situation where I'm sure he would love to add something to his board, as now Thragtusk is going to join the party.
So Kibler does have a Falconwrath Aristocrat, along with a Putrefy and the Zealous Conscript. So Zealous Conscript Aristocrat, pretty good combo at stealing and sacrificing Thragtusks.
Draw a card. It's a forest. Now, it's either I actually think the card in his hand is Olivia Valderin and not Falconwrath Aristocrat. I'm not positive because he goes through his hand so fast.
Oh no, he has both. I think he has Olivia. Oh wait, no, maybe. Yeah, it is Olivia.
It is Olivia.
Okay. So Olivia comes down, and again, you know, Olivia is a very effective card in this matchup too, especially because it doesn't look like Chris has any removal in this. He has a Sphinx Revelation and Dissipate. Can't make up the last 2 cards, but again, Olivia, one of those cards that can easily just start taking over games.
And you take a look at the things that he has to kill Olivia. Of course, he has those 3 Supreme Verdicts in his main deck. He's also got an Attention Sphere as well. You look at his sideboard, he's got an additional Attention Sphere over there, and that's really about it. So his deck is definitely soft to that type of card.
And it's great too because it's basically the only threat that Kibler really needs. He doesn't need to commit that much more to the board. He doesn't have to overplay into Wrath of God, or Supreme Verdict rather. Looks like Arbrelf's going to come down just to get a little more mana. Or no, he's debating it.
It's really a decision about how far do I want to extend. You know, assuming that my opponent, I think Kibler's thought process right now is assuming my opponent does have Mass Removal in his deck somewhere. He's playing Bant and a Bant control deck, so I think it's a pretty safe assumption. How far do I want to extend? How important is this Arbrelf to what I'm trying to do? You know, that's the thing he's trying to figure out because, you know, if he gets you know, Wrath or, you know, Mass Removal strikes, he's got to throw him a Hellkite for backup to kind of punch Chris in the face for 5.
Yeah.
But he needs to be pretty careful about how he allocates his resources moving forward because he doesn't want to get ruined. But if you don't commit a lot, that's when Revelations become backbreaking, and you see one for 3 right now.
Yeah, you have to play against the devil you know, not the one you don't know. So I think that you can't play around Supreme Verdict when he didn't cast it, and he could easily just cast Sphinx Revelation and make that play look foolish.
And Sphinx Revelation for 3 netted Herron another Thragtusk, an Angel Serenity, and some other cards, but then he just drew another Sphinx Revelation for the turn. So he's doing something we haven't seen in a little while, which is what made these Bant decks so powerful, which is chaining Revelation into Revelation.
Yeah. And here, great play by Chris. He's going to attack. Kibler naturally assumes he has a Supreme Verdict, but, you know, he doesn't. He just forces a trade there, and he passes the turn back.
Yeah, we're nice and some mana here. So is maybe another Thragtusk going to come into play here? He's got 4 mana.
Oh, so
okay,
he does
it's a
have
verdict.
Supreme
Okay,
Verdict.
sure.
Okay. So in that case, I'm not sure why he attacked first.
So I think maybe his thought was that Kibler would not block, and he could cheat 5 points of damage.
I don't think you can make that play against someone as good as Kibler.
Yeah.
I understand trying to, you know, make a bluff attack against certain players, but when you're in round 5 of a Grand Prix and you're playing against a Hall of Famer, I just make the safe play.
Yeah.
Cast Supreme Verdict first, get a 3/3 afterwards.
So now Kibler, predictably, is punishing Herron now with a Thunderbolt Hellkite, so he has backup in a haste creature, so he can reload. That's what makes the deck so powerful.
Yeah.
Is that, you know, Mass Removal is pretty good against the deck because it takes down the doofuses. As you see, a Thragtusk here is going to put Herron back to 25, but he can reload after a Mass Removal effect so easily.
Yeah.
You know, if he peels off another Dragon here or Falconwrath Aristocrat or anything, then he can just turn this game back around and force Herron to have another one of those type of effects.
And the fact is, because Herron had another, I'm not sure if he had another Sphinx Revelation. Maybe that foil Supreme Verdict.
That's what that was.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what that was.
So here comes Zealous Conscript and the Dissipate. Ooh, timely Dissipate.
Very good Dissipate there.
So Thundermore's going to come in for another 5, dropping Chris to 20. Unfortunately, Kibler does have a Putrefy and a Bonfire of the Dam, which, you know, Bonfire is not that great, but it can actually deal with the Thragtusk currently if he can. So how much mana does he have?
He has 7 right now.
He's a couple away, yeah. So he does have a Putrefy to deal with the Angel Serenity if that comes down, but...
Man, Herron has another Thragtusk in his hand.
Yeah.
And again, I see no reason just not to commit that to the board.
Yeah, if I was Herron, the last possible card I'd want to cast is Angel Serenity.
Me too.
Like, I would wait until Kibler expended all his resources and then drop that Angel Serenity. You don't need to. You're gaining 5 life, and you're actually ahead of the race. Oh,
Yep,
is that a top deck
nope,
bonfire?
that's just a bonfire for 3. Just a bonfire for 3.
So yeah, he was able to do with both Thragtusk there, and he leaves the Thundermaw back to block. So, wow, Detention Spirit to deal with the Thundermaw Hellkite here. Pretty good rip there from Chris. Again, I would not cast that Angel Serenity until I absolutely had to. There's no reason for it.
See, that Angel Serenity just gives Herron all the inevitability in the world.
Yep, just get your Thragtusk back later on.
And so now there's a Witchbane Orb just to make sure that he's safe against Bonfire, Rakdos Return, Slaughter Games, what have you. Kibler draws a card for the turn. Does not look to be horribly relevant as he's shuffling his cards very, very quickly. You see a Farseek. He's going to cast that.
So now Kibler might try to just putrefy one of the tokens. Either way, I think at this point now I would probably cast Angel Serenity just because Kibler didn't even commit a threat to the board. I would just rebuy my Thragtusk.
Yeah, force him in this damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
Yep.
Because I think what we're going to see here, assuming that Chris doesn't have the red source, is, you can make an argument for putrefying the Beast token. I actually think what Kibler has to do now is putrefy the Witchbane Orb and hope to peel Bonfire.
That you think this is only out?
Yeah. To at least try to get him back into the game. I don't even know if that's going to win him the game, but I think it at least gets him back into the game. So okay, he's just going to putrefy a token because if he peels Bonfire, he can't actually target Herron because of the Witchbane Orb.
I think Kibler's afraid of just dying. He doesn't want to go down to 1, and then maybe. I mean, I kind of agree with you. Maybe Kibler's only out there was a Bonfire, so you have to deal with the orb. But either way, I think either play is probably fine. Because here comes Angel of Serenity anyway, so he's going to rebuy all those Thragtusk.
So Kibler's going to draw a card here for the turn. Sitting at 4 life, draws a Stomping Ground, is going to concede the game. So Chris Herron does win the match with a deep sigh of relief over Hall of Famer Brian Kibler. 2-1. Herron going to move on to 5-0. Jund Aggro takes the defeat here, and Back Control looked pretty impressive. And going to unzip the shirt too.
Well, I was talking with Patrick before. Thragtusk, Restoration Angel, very good combo.
Peanut butter, jelly.
Any deck that can play those 2 cards is generally going